Alright, here's a detailed, historically accurate long-form story about August 6, 1945, when the United States dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan. I'll weave it in a narrative style, but keep it faithful to the historical facts. The day the sky changed, August 6, 1945. In the summer of 1945, the Second World War was dragging into its sixth year. Across Europe, the guns had fallen silent. Nazi Germany had surrendered in May. But in the Pacific, the war between the United States and Japan still raged with a ferocity that had shocked even the most hardened soldiers. Battles like Iwo Jima and Okinawa had shown how fiercely Japanese forces would fight, and U.S. military planners feared that invading Japan's home islands could cost hundreds of thousands of American lives and perhaps millions of Japanese. The decision, at the center of this storm stood President Harry S. Truman. When he took office in April 1945, Truman inherited a secret that only a handful of men knew: the Manhattan Project, a $2 billion effort to build a weapon unlike anything the world had ever seen. By July, the weapon had been tested successfully in the New Mexico desert. The code name was Little Boy for the uranium-based bomb, and Fat Man for the plutonium version. Truman and his advisors faced a grim calculation: a full-scale invasion of Japan versus using the atomic bomb to try to end the war swiftly. On July 26, the Allies issued the Potsdam Declaration, demanding Japan's unconditional surrender. The Japanese government, dominated by its military faction, did not accept. Mission to Hiroshima. At 2:45 a.m. on August 6, 1945, the American B-29 bomber Enola Gay, commanded by Colonel Paul W. Tibbets, lifted off from Tinian Island in the Pacific. Inside its bomb bay was Little Boy, a weapon that weighed nearly 9,000 pounds. The target, Hiroshima, a city of about 350,000 people, chosen because it was an important military command center, a transportation hub, and critically had not been heavily bombed yet, making it ideal for evaluating the weapon's effects. The crew knew the bomb was powerful, but even they could not truly imagine the devastation it would cause. The morning in Hiroshima. In Hiroshima, the morning began like any other in wartime Japan. Air raid sirens had sounded before, but nothing had happened. American reconnaissance planes often flew over without dropping bombs. At around 7:09 a.m., a warning went out that enemy aircraft were approaching, but by 8 a.m., the all-clear was given. People returned to work, schoolchildren headed to classes, and soldiers drilled in the streets. The sky was cloudless. The bomb falls. At 8:15 a.m., from 31,000 feet above, the Enola Gay released Little Boy. The bomb took about 44 seconds to fall. It detonated at approximately 1,900 feet above the city center, unleashing a blinding flash and a fireball hotter than the surface of the sun. In less than a second, temperatures at ground zero reached for 0 degrees Celsius, 7 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Buildings within a mile radius were instantly flattened. The blast wave tore through the city at supersonic speeds, and the heat ignited wooden houses and paper walls in an instant. Shadows of people and objects were seared into stone surfaces, the so-called Hiroshima shadows. About 70,000 to 80,000 people were killed instantly. Tens of thousands more were wounded, many with severe burns and injuries. The mushroom cloud rose more than 40,000 feet into the sky. Aftermath and shock. In the hours after the blast, survivors later called Hibakusha wandered the ruins in shock, many with skin hanging from their arms, others blinded by the flash. Fires burned throughout the city. Water became scarce, and radiation sickness began to take its toll, though no one at the time understood exactly why people were suddenly vomiting and losing their hair. Back in the United States, President Truman addressed the nation from the USS Augusta on his way back from the Potsdam Conference. If they do not now accept our terms, they may expect a rain of ruin from the air, the like of which has never been. Japan's response. Despite the horror of Hiroshima, the Japanese government did not immediately surrender. Some leaders insisted on conditions to protect the emperor's position, while others still believed they could force better terms through continued resistance. 3 days later, On August 9th, the U.S. dropped the second atomic bomb Fat Man on Nagasaki. Only after these events, and the Soviet Union's declaration of war on Japan, did the emperor intervene. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito addressed the nation by radio, announcing Japan's surrender and ending World War II. Legacy: the bombing of Hiroshima remains one of the most controversial decisions in military history. Supporters argue it shortened the war and saved lives that would have been lost in an invasion. Critics say it unleashed unnecessary suffering on civilians and began the nuclear arms race. Today, Hiroshima is a symbol of both human tragedy and resilience. The Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park and the preserved ruins of the Genbaku Dome stand as reminders of that morning when, as many survivors said, the sun fell from the sky.